it's not only youth who feel that the system is not working for them. They are not the only ones who feel that the rich and the powerful have undue advantage over political processes and decision-making, and that with money and contribution to politicians, they can influence things. It's not only the youth who are worried about the inequality in our societies, where ordinary people seem to think that the political system works for the rich and not for them. So there's anger everywhere, but the young people can make a difference. You can decide to participate in politics. You have the vote, you have the right to use, to make your voices heard. And not only should you participate, you can also lead. I've often said that one is never too young to lead, and we are not too old to learn. I'm always learning, But you have the capacity to lead. The leaders have to engage them, and if the leaders don't engage, you make them engage. You raise a question. You ask them, what are you doing about these issues? Don't let them get away with it. Firmly also believe that in situations where leaders fail to lead, the people can lead. That is, you can lead and make them follow. So don't underestimate your own power. As individuals, you have power. You have power in how you use your vote. You have power in the choices you make, whether on companies that are green, companies that are fighting to protect the environment, or parties that are progressive, and on issues that are important to you. When we talk of leadership, nobody's asking you to go and resolve Syria or to go and deal with North Korea. It starts in your community, in your school, in your organization, where you see something is wrong and decide, I'm going to do something about this, and organize with friends to act. If we all do our little bit, collectively, we make a giant contribution. So use the energy, the creativity in you. You are the men and women of your times. You are connected, you are wired, you understand this world better than people my generation. Don't be impressed by these noises, unfortunately sometimes coming from leaders. We need to work together, and you have to be part of the change you want to be. And so I'm relying on you to deliver.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our host tonight, Kate O'Regan, the director of the Bonavero Institute of Human Rights.
Thank you, Maud, and thank you very much to our partners in presenting this wonderful selection of talks this evening, the peace talks. Our partners are Interpeace, the Kofi Annan Foundation, and the Oxford Africa Conference. And this is the first time that the peace talks have been held at a university, and the first time in Oxford. And I'm particularly delighted that all the speakers are going to be from Africa. This is a focus on Africa. As a South African myself, it seems to be a very moving occasion for me. It is made even more moving by starting off with a clip from Kofi Annan. Those of you who walked into the building would first have walked past Eleanor Roosevelt, and then you would have walked past the plaque which notes that Kofi Annan opened the Bonavero Institute for Human Rights formally just last June 2018, not a year ago. And when he was here, one of the things he said was that in seeking to protect and promote human rights in our world, the most important thing we can do is tell one another's stories. So I have no doubt that he would be delighted to see all of you here this evening to tell your stories, to tell what it is that you're doing to promote peace in the world. because that is very much what he believed in. So I hope you'll all enjoy the evening with us. Thanks again to our partners. We're delighted to have you all here.
Great. Thank you so much, Kate, for that warm welcome. My name is Sarah Noble, and I'm the curator of the Peace Talks at Interpeace.
I'm Maud Roux. I'm head of programs at the Kofi Annan Foundation, and we will be your MCs tonight.
Great. So warm welcome to all of you and the viewers online. And tonight on social media, we're using hashtag Oxford Peace Talks. And for those of you upstairs, please feel free to come down. The Peace Talks is a global initiative that aims to show that everybody has a role to play in building peace. It's now in its 6th year, and it's an initiative that was co-founded by Interpeace, the United Nations Office at Geneva, the Geneva Peacebuilding Platform with the support of the Swiss government. And it's an event series that has traveled around the world, and we've held 12 peace talks in parliaments, in city halls, and in the United Nations from Geneva to Nairobi. We've had 131 speakers from the 11-year-old president of Kenya's children's government to, as you saw just now, the 7th Secretary General of the United Nations, Kofi Annan. As Kate mentioned, today's event is brought to you by Interpeace, the Kofi Annan Foundation, the Oxford Africa Conference, of which we are a satellite event, and hosted by the Bonavero Institute, and in partnership with OxPeace and with Mirabeau Bank. And as Kate also mentioned, we're super excited because this is the first time, hopefully of many, that we bring the Peace Talks to a university campus, and we're delighted to be here at Oxford.
The 7 speakers you will hear from tonight come from very different backgrounds to emphasize that each and every one of us, regardless of our age or background, can actually contribute to peace in our communities and beyond. This is something that Kofi Annan strongly believed in. As you just saw in the video, he often said, you are never too young to lead and never too old to learn. This is something that we have embraced at the Kofi Annan Foundation, as one of our main areas of work is on promoting youth leadership. Kofi Annan's legacy is an illustration of the theme of the Peace Talks. His contribution to peace has truly transcended borders, and he has contributed to asserting Africa's relevance globally. So tonight, our aim is to help shift the needle on the narrative of Africa from being a continent in need to being a continent of global relevance with lessons and best practices in terms of peace. So let's get started. Our first speaker tonight will be Anupa Makund from Mauritius. Anupa is only 32, but she's had several lives already, from performing traditional Indian dances to preventing youth in Mauritius from becoming drug addicts, or to also exploring the sources of people's resilience to conflict in Guatemala, Timor-Leste, and Liberia. But Anupa has stopped traveling for a while, and she's now pursuing an MSc in evidence-based social intervention and policy evaluation at the University of Oxford. She's also the co-chair of the 2019 Oxford Africa Conference. Please join us in welcoming Anupa.
So when I was 10 years old, I used to get very good grades in school, and I even got good grades in math. And that sparked a dream of how maybe one day I might become an engineer. Like many Mauritians, my ancestors had come to the island as indentured laborers to work in the sugarcane fields. And so telling the story of progress from bonded manual labor to having a professional career with a scientific education was the success story I needed to tell in order to honor all of the sacrifices that my parents and grandparents and great-grandparents had made over generations. So when I was 10, life seemed pretty straightforward. Keep getting good grades, get a scholarship, go abroad to study engineering, come back and be the best possible engineer in Mauritius. There's 1.3 million of us. It's not that hard. This was when I was 10. None of that happened. I do not stand in front of you as an engineer. Shortly afterwards, I hit puberty. And like many adolescents, I had a very self-important existential crisis where I was questioning the meaning of life. Something else happened to me, and that was the internet. So I found out about the world beyond the coral reefs of my island. And somehow, by the time I was 19, I had decided I was going to work in peace building. So this strange word came to me because it was a strange word. Nobody talks about peace building in Mauritius. The strange word came to me because of 3 wise men. When I was 18, I had the amazing experience. Within a very short period of time, I saw 3 people speak: Marty Atisari, Johan Galtung, and Kofi Annan. And something went through my head. How is it that 3 men who are quite advanced in age, who have spent their lives in conflict zones, how are they standing in front of me with so much energy, so much optimism, and so much joy? This was the meaning of life. And I was going to do whatever they were doing. But when I went to my parents and told them, I'm going to build peace, I think they were first a little disappointed. They felt like I was wasting my potential. You know, a kid who does well in school should do something scientific. The other thing was they felt I was being a little bit spoiled. This do-gooder business of doing peace and something abstract is something you do when you're retired, like you're not going to get a living out of it. But I was very stubborn and also quite enjoyed being rebellious at that age. And I went forward with it. So about 10, 15 years later, when I stand in front of you today, I ask myself the question, have I honored all of the sacrifices that my grandparents and great-grandparents have made? I don't know. It's hard to tell. And whenever I say that I'm a peace builder, I sometimes feel like an imposter. Because I don't have an equation for building peace. I don't have a template. I don't have a formula. And quite frankly, I don't know more about building peace than any other person, whether it's my brother who's an engineer or my uncle who made me this dress. When I think of whether there's purpose in what I do, I think back to a meeting I was at with Maud, actually, 2 years ago in Gisenyi. So Gisenyi is a beautiful town on the border between DRC, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Rwanda. So we were in this meeting, and we had gathered. I was supporting Interpeace in facilitating a meeting where we brought together people from Rwanda, Burundi, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And the objective of that meeting was to design a project to foster reconciliation in the border regions. As many of you know, the Great Lakes border region is a place that has suffered conflict for many decades and where many people continue to be displaced and continue to feel unsafe. So we were at this meeting, and throughout this meeting, the hardest thing was getting people to agree on what reconciliation means. Some people said it was about intermarriage, some people said it was about education, some people said it was about changing mindsets, some people said it was about forgiveness, others said no, it's about trying those who committed crimes. So there were a lot of disagreements, and I remember sitting in the corner of the room at some point and saying, if we're disagreeing about definitions, how are we going to implement this project? But the project went on, and we managed to find a compromise. And guess what? Reconciliation is all of these things and then some. And as we progressed with the project, we kept reviewing the definitions. But when I think back of that meeting, I take back two things that sums up what being a peace builder means for me. The first is creating space for people's voices to be heard. and for people to hear each other. Whether it was the logistical work of crossing difficult, badly made roads and difficult borders, getting people's visas, or the reassurance we had to give people so that they felt safe coming to that space, all of that groundwork and all of the preparation, the idea of creating space for people's voices to be heard. You would think it's easy, but it's actually difficult. And that's something worth doing, and I'm proud to do that. The second thing, and that's slightly ironic coming from somebody whose job description includes the word peace, I think you need to embrace the conflict. I think that meeting, what it did is it allowed people to disagree. It allowed people to contradict each other. And actually from that contradiction, from these disagreements, that's how you churn out the innovations that allow you to build peace. Not only did it build legitimacy, because people felt that they owned the different solutions that emerged, but it also gave some very innovative things. And I always say this, and it's a little funny because I don't know anything about computers. I feel like peace building is always beta testing, because we never have the perfect solution. It always needs to be used or tried. So this is my contribution to peace. It's not perfect. I don't have a formula. It's not very tangible. But I do hope that I'm trying my best to honor all of the sacrifices of my grandparents. Thank you very much. So thank you for listening to me. It was quite hard for me to think of all this, because it's always hard to think about peace, and it's quite an abstract thing. But I also stand in front of you today as the co-chair of the Oxford Africa Conference, which is happening as from tomorrow. And I just want to say that it's such a privilege for me that this event has happened. So Mauritius is part of Africa, even though it's a small island. I felt it was important that we have an event about peace, and it brings me so much joy that it's led by Africans, because we often hear that Africa is the continent where all the conflict is happening. But you're going to hear some amazing speakers today, and I want you to leave this place thinking that Africa is the place where all the peace is happening as well. So for those of you who are in Oxford, do come to the Oxford Africa Conference. There are plenty of events over the next few days, and I definitely want to thank the Bonavero Institute for hosting us, Interpeace, and the Kofi Annan Foundation. I mean, the fact that we were able to do this to honor the legacy of Kofi Annan is what every African wants to be. And as a peace builder, what Kofi Annan did, he did not only build peace in Africa, he was an African building peace in the world. And I think that's what us young people, that's what we want to be, at least for me. So thank you very much to all of you for coming.
Thank you so much, Aniko, for your talk. So our next speaker is Kayiya Mudau, and she is a physiotherapist from South Africa, and she is a Rhodes Scholar pursuing her doctoral degree here at Oxford. Last week when we were talking about what the link between physiotherapy and peace is, she referred me to a video, which many of you may have actually seen because it was viral, which is a young Afghani boy smiling and dancing after he had just been fitted with a prosthetic leg by his physiotherapist. So today she's going to talk to us about physiotherapy, but also what physiotherapy can help people do and how it can help rebuild a society. So welcome, the floor is yours.
About 4 years ago, I worked as a physiotherapist in a rural district hospital in South Africa. And part of my job entailed meeting with patients in the hospital. And during that time, I met a woman in her late 20s. She had a little child and was involved in part-time employment. And when I met her in the hospital, she had just received surgery to remove her leg from the knee down after illness. And part of my job as a physiotherapist was to come alongside her and support her as she relearned to do the tasks of getting out of bed, bathing herself, taking care of her little one, as well as returning to employment. And it was a real privilege for me to be able to walk this journey with this individual. While she would have been a good candidate to receive an artificial limb or a prosthetic device, she was not able to receive one. And at the time, it's because in South Africa's public health system, we weren't able to procure one for her. Now, sadly, this is not a unique story. In South Africa, there are 26 public universities, 8 of which train rehabilitation providers such as physiotherapists. Once these rehabilitation trainees graduate from university, about 20% of them end up working in the public health system. And this is the health system that most South Africans make use of. Furthermore, of the posts that are available for rehabilitation providers in the public health system, about a third of them remain unoccupied. Now, what these numbers point to is a critical gap in the provision of rehabilitation services such as physiotherapy in South Africa. And this is as it relates to the generation of new rehabilitation providers, whether they end up being absorbed into employment into the public health sector, and whether over time they remain and they are retained in the public health sector. And these are really important gaps that are the subject of my thesis and doctoral research. Access to physiotherapy services, I believe, has such a crucial role in rebuilding the lives of individuals after disease or disaster. However, many people, particularly people with disabilities, face a multitude of barriers when accessing rehabilitation services if they require them in the Eastern Cape. And this is particularly because of a variety of barriers. These barriers may be financial barriers associated with the costs of accessing healthcare. They might be social barriers, such as the stigma that people with disabilities encounter from health professionals or the community at large. And some of these barriers are also in the form of inaccessible facilities for people with a wide variety of disabilities, not just movement or physical disabilities. Access to physiotherapy services provides individuals with the opportunity to answer the question of what happens now after disease or disaster has been resolved. And I believe that access to physiotherapy services is an important part of rebuilding peace, rebuilding the lives of individuals so that they can do the things that are important to them. One of the things that I have found great joy in being able to do is being part of a rehabilitation team. And the good news is that physiotherapists are not the only people who are involved in making this a reality. They are occupational therapists. These are rehabilitation providers who are trained in ensuring and enabling individuals return and are reintegrated into society. There are also prosthetists, people who ensure that people have access to artificial limbs when they have lost their own. So physiotherapists, occupational therapists, prosthetists, all form part of this incredible rehabilitation team. This team that works together to enable individuals to live the lives that are important to them so that they can get back to the things that are important to them. I have had the joy of being able to see individuals relearn how to do activities in the hospital. I have seen them take step after step, one step further than the previous day, with or without an assistive device, and they've shown me so much tenacity. And I believe that everyone should have the opportunity to do the things that are important to them. As I mentioned at the start of this talk, I mentioned the lady who wanted to get a prosthetic limb and would have been a good candidate and never received it. But there is another story. As was mentioned earlier, I saw a video that had gone viral on social media about this little boy, hands in the air, dancing around in a circle, doing the things that children should be doing anyways, dancing, playing. and this video taken by his physiotherapist. And this is because this child, along with the rehabilitation team that was with him, whoever they were, enabled that family to answer the question of what happens now. And I think it is a real important and a crucial part of the health system to take part in this effort. I believe that health systems, including those of South Africa, have a real duty to ensure that rehabilitation services are both available and accessible to people with disabilities. And this is where my research comes in. I look at particularly the Eastern Cape, which is classified as one of the most deprived provinces in the country. And I see how to ensure that services are available in that province. Rehabilitation services, don't get me wrong, are not meant to fix people. Rehabilitation services enable people to answer that critical question of what happens now. Rehabilitation services are about rebuilding.
So our next speaker, Sadat Zagaziwa, is unable to join us tonight because of a visa issue. We were quite disappointed because with the peace talks, we wanted to also showcase young Africans who don't get international exposure and who don't get to speak at conferences at Oxford. Fortunately, Sadat managed to make a video of his talk this morning, so we'll be able to watch his story. Just as an introduction, Sadat is a former gang member turned peace ambassador from Uganda. He's created the Ngabo Youth Friendly Service Center. Ngabo means shield in Luganda. And through his work, he seeks to shield young people from violent extremism and to champion youth-friendly services across his country. So let's watch his story.
The greatness of man does not lie in the number of great things done, but rather in the impact created to each soul in times it's needed. When you come to Africa, such audience can be told the speaker next is a former gangster, and they will hold their phones a little. To some, might run away. But in UK, where respect for human dignity is, people will clap for you because they believe in your potential and the energy. Growing up in a less privileged family, where a mother plays a key role in nurturing and ensuring that accommodation, feeding, and all other basic necessities upon the children, at the age of 14, I lost my mom. May her soul rest in peace. It was a terrible moment for me indeed to try and survive as an individual. Remember, talent and beauty are equally disputed, but opportunities and choices are limited in the ghetto space. I rose for who I am today because of my history. Sadat Zaga is a former gangster who led very many violent demonstrations in the country, to the extent that at one time I was influenced by my Somali colleague to join one of the terrorist groups in this war. And I survived narrowly at the Uganda-Kenyan border simply because I didn't have any travel document. Coming back to Kampala, I offered my energy to carry and to offload and load luggage in exchange for transport. But when I got into Kampala, things were still the same at home. I had to fall back to the streets and the gang space because it's the only place that could help me, believe in me, cherish my energy, and indeed I called it home by then. And many of those kids you see in the gang space, that is their home. I remember one time I survived the live bullets from the police shooting over land conflict. Just as I made a step, the person next or behind me was shot dead. That left a scar to my brain. Trying to escape, I was arrested by police, taken to the nearby police station. And in a few hours, I was transferred to the headquarters. Ladies and gentlemen, this was my turning point. I met this gentleman, a police officer, sat me down, counseled me, talked to me, listened to me, and treated me like a son, something I was longing for in my home because I didn't have anyone to talk to. Then he offered me $57 in Ugandan shillings. It rounds up to 200,000 Ugandan shillings for my lunch, supper, and to continue with the rest of the days as I reflect and rethink about my purpose of life. That act kept haunting me each time I felt like falling back to the gang space. And in 2014, I started my journey towards transformation and talked to very many to inspire very many gangsters to be able to adopt a positive living. In 2014, with my friend, we share the same history. We started our co-founded Ngabo Youth Friendly Service Center as a space for the ghetto people, as a space for the gangsters to be rehabilitated through skilling them for hope as an alternative to their life, mentor and coach them to adopt positive living, provide social justice since it's hard for communities to accept these individuals for who they are. The same experiences can be adopted into the global agenda to ensure that we provide the love, the hope, the skilling for these individuals, and mentor them to be that good person they want to be. Just like as I did. Ladies and gentlemen, if I was a terrorist, would I be speaking to you today or terrorizing you? Just like you. If you're denied opportunity to showcase what you have, your energies and your potentials upon your professions in this room, you can walk outside this room with all your faces looking like a tear gas tank. And don't laugh, because in Africa we are familiar. Any kind of violence, we solve it by tear gas. And that is the order of the day. Thank you so much.
So I'm pleased to introduce our musical interlude. Ngoni Mugwizi is a musician, scholar, and leader. He plays the mbira, which is a traditional instrument from Zimbabwe. He's played it in many settings, including receptions in Zimbabwe, a festival in Arizona, schools in Japan, and at the inauguration of the Bonavero Institute of Human Rights last year. Ngoni is also a DPhil candidate researching power electronics for universal electrification applications as a Rhodes Scholar. Ngoni was kind enough to accept to play for us tonight, even though he's got a broken wrist. So please give a warm welcome to Ngoni.
Hello. Hey everyone, thanks for being here and peace be with you. I'm going to play the mbira. It's a traditional instrument from Zimbabwe. Got 15 keys here, and it's been played for over 1,000 years. I hope you enjoy it. The first song I'm playing is called Hondo. Thank you very much. So a little bit about that song. Wondo means war in Zimbabwe, which is quite antithetical to what we are talking about here, peace. But actually this song was sang in celebration of the liberation struggle that freed Zimbabwe. So I think it's quite appropriate, and I hope you liked it. I'm going to play another one. This one is called Chigwaya. Chigwaya is a type of fish, and this song was played in the traditional days when people were going fishing, and it was a prayer to increase the catch. So I guess our catch here is peace. So I'm gonna hope that and pray that you get whatever you are trying to catch. Thank you. Fortunately, we got time for one more, so enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ngoni. That was beautiful. I'm very pleased to welcome our next speaker. Our next speaker is Dr. Sala Kingoro, because we worked together on the Nairobi Peace Talks a few years ago. Dr. Sala is the Assistant Director of Research, Policy and Planning at Kenya's National Cohesion and Integration Commission, the NCIC. She's a researcher by training, and through her work she shows the importance of how research translates into real life, and she seeks to measure peace, ethnic relations, genocide prevention, and social cohesion, among other things. Welcome, Dr. Sala.
Thank you very much. I'm very delighted to be here. I would also like to start by taking you back. I was 11 years old. My grandmother called me in one evening and said, "Here, put this on." She gave me my grandfather's jacket and socks. And at that time, usually she would tell me stories. So I asked so many questions. She said, "Well, just follow me and hurry up." So I followed her, trying to match her steps. But of course, I wouldn't catch up because my strides were very short and the jacket was also very heavy. So we arrived at the cave near the river, and she told me, "Go to the back where the children are and make sure no one makes a sound." Silence was our only protection. The cave would be our abode for a couple of weeks until the violence between the two neighboring communities would cease. Now, even without understanding the nature of the conflict, I wondered, how can adults not just sit down and resolve their disputes? Why wouldn't some of them just let go like I did at school when one of my colleagues would snatch a mango from me? Instead, they decided to torch each other's houses. They decided to injure each other. And that lingered on my mind. Now, some of you may be wondering, how can Africa lead for peace if these are the scenarios that you hear about Africa? Well, things have changed, and I'm really, really delighted to share the story today. Africa is increasingly adopting homegrown solutions to address conflicts. The 2007-2008 post-election violence hit Kenya by surprise. Even some of us who were working in the peace sector were actually taken aback. However, its response was calculated and indigenous. Kenya was described as a haven of peace in a sea of turmoil, with its neighbors like Sudan having experienced over 20 years civil war, Somalia that didn't even have a government. However, the post-election violence was a bit different from the community conflicts I earlier described. It spread across the country. We woke up to neighbors attacking each other in broad daylight under the glare of both national and international media. In a span of only 6 weeks, 1,500 people had lost their lives, and over 600,000 had been displaced. The African Union put together a team of eminent persons, led by the Honorable Kofi Annan, to come and mediate between the two political parties. Now, this mediation process was highly participatory. Some would think perhaps the team would have talked only to the political parties, but on the sidelines, we had meetings of concerned citizens, meetings that brought together NGOs, religious leaders, elders, among others. And I was privileged to be part of this team. One of the times I made a submission to the team of eminent persons, and we were emphasizing the fact that despite the fact that the immediate issue was power sharing, we needed to look at the underlying issues of the violence. I'm really glad to say that the mediation process gave birth to local institutions that would later address root causes of post-election violence. Now, one of the institutions that was born was the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, where I was privileged to work thereafter. Today, we actually enjoy a new constitution in Kenya. We have wider civic space. We do have we are really sensitive to inequalities, thanks to these homegrown solutions. as it was shared, I'm also a researcher. And the other thing that Africa is doing currently to actually stay on the cutting edge is it's embracing research. It is putting in place more evidence-based interventions, especially in the field of peace building. I will share my story in this regard. Charon et al., Charon and some few authors, in 2018 mentioned that between 2012 and 2016, the number of authors writing about Africa and from Africa grew at the rate of 43%. That is to say, there are more people who are doing research on African matters. Now, we also are doing a lot of research around peace building in Kenya. And one of the things we appreciate after post-election violence is that minority rights play a key role, particularly in resolving identity-based conflicts. So in the year 2010, I led a team to undertake the first ever ethnic audit of the public service, which aimed at looking at the composition of all public employees in Kenya, so that we can know which ethnic communities have been employed by government and which ones have not. There were various findings, but today I will share only one, and that is the ethnic communities that were totally lacking in government employment. There were about 8 of them. Kenya has over 42 ethnic groups, and out of these, 8 of them did not have even a single member employed in the entire government service. And we started lobbying for affirmative action for these 8 communities. Some of the actions that we did was to take adverts to the regions where the minority communities were based, to do personal referrals if someone knew a member of a minority ethnic group that would fit in a certain job, to set aside positions in specific government agencies for minority communities, among others. Now, I will share a story of one Letangule who is from the Ilchamus community. He was employed by one of the public universities in Kenya in the year 2014. Not only did he get a job as a janitor, but he also was offered free tuition for one of his siblings. He can now pay school fees for his children as well as his siblings. And this is what Letangule had to say. He said, "This job will help my daughter to also join university employment in future, but not as a janitor like me, as a professor." The research findings have actually been incorporated in the State of the Nation address that the president gives every year to look at which communities are still left out in terms of public service and which ones have been incorporated. In conclusion, Mwalimu Julius Nyerere from Tanzania said that if real development has to take place, the people have to be involved. And I dare say they have to be included. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sela. Our next speaker now is Daniel Pilo Richards. He's an award-winning South African actor. I had the pleasure of seeing him perform recently in Geneva, and I was amazed by his ability to act, sing, play the guitar, imitate all sorts of characters and accents, make us think, make us laugh, all at once. Now, Daniel is also the creative director for the Reuben Richards Foundation, which is a non-profit organization that aims to heal the hearts, minds, and souls of traumatized communities through therapy, job creation, conflict mediation, and art therapy. Welcome, Daniel.
It was a hot, sunny day in Cape Town, South Africa, and I was standing next to one of the most notorious gang leaders in Cape Town. This man was the leader of more than 3,000 gang members I'd also learned that this gang leader had survived 3 assassination attempts. The most recent one took place below his apartment, in the courtyard. And where was I standing? In the courtyard. My friend and I were standing next to each other, trembling as this gang leader was conversing with my father. He then looked over and said, "Kom ons gaan boe voor hulle vir ons skiet." Let's go upstairs before they shoot us. Okay. Now, who of you have been to Cape Town, South Africa? Show of hands. Many of you. Those of you who have been have probably been there as a tourist. You've probably enjoyed some of the most exceptional beaches. Table Mountain, one of the top 10 wonders of the world. Now, I've lived, studied, and worked in Cape Town the last 10 years, and I've come to know a different side to Cape Town. The not-so-sexy side. The other side of Table Mountain, where my father was born and grew up. See, I see Cape Town as the city of 2 worlds. And it's most evident to me when I fly into Cape Town and land at Cape Town International Airport. Because on our descent, while most people are taking photos of Table Mountain or bracing themselves for the turbulence, I look down and I see one of Cape Town's largest informal settlements, Shackland, home to 2 million people. It's called Khayelitsha. Next to Khayelitsha is a place called Mitchell's Plain, one of Cape Town's biggest ganglands, one of many, home to 1.5 million people. Now, Khayelitsha and Mitchell's Plain form part of what locals call the Cape Flats, or the flatlands of the Cape Peninsula. And the Cape Flats were socially engineered for people classified as colored. Now, for those of you who don't know, colored people look like me, a few shades lighter and a few shades darker. And colored was a label given to us by the oppressive apartheid regime at the time. Colored is a term I despise because of its negative connotations. Now, I don't mean to steer you away from Cape Town as a tourist destination, but I thought it would be useful for me to share some facts with you to give you the context in which I do some of my work as creative director of the Reuben Richards Foundation. Now, as you know and have experienced, Cape Town is one of the most beautiful, but also one of the most violent cities in the world. It is currently ranked as the #1 murder capital of the world, with an average of 57 murders a day. It is estimated that 1 in 7 colored males end up in prison. Gangland is home to between 100,000 to 200,000 youth signed up as gang members. That is triple the number of South African Defence Force soldiers in the whole of South Africa. Now, as mentioned, I work with a non-profit organization, and I contribute to the healing and peace-building process by using art as a medium of dialogue. For example, theater-based workshops. So how was I standing next to a gang boss? Well, my father, Dr. Reuben Richards, founder of the Reuben Richards Foundation, had negotiated the longest ceasefire in the history of gang violence on the Cape Flats. And let's just say we were requested. We had spent 2 hours with this man, and he told us his life story, how at the age of 13, he was caught for stealing, thrown in jail, and had to make a life-altering decision to literally kill to survive or become a victim of the system. Years later, he sits in front of me telling me that he is still a victim of the system, that there is no way out for him other than death. This is the code that he signed. Blood is spilt to get in, and blood is spilt to get out. Now, kids are recruited in these gangs from as young as 10 years old. And it's attractive for them to be in these gangs because it gives them a sense of belonging. They're recognized. I mean, that's a basic human need. Imagine you're 10 years old and you see your brother in a gang and you want to be in that gang. So what do you got to do to get in the gang? You got to prove yourself. So you got to steal something. But now you want to move up in the ranks. So you got to do something else. Rob someone. Next step, stab someone. Next step, shoot someone. Final step, kill someone. A simple career path. And success is rewarded. And this gang leader, that's what he did. He killed his way to the top. And he was rewarded. And now more than 25 years later, he sits as the big boss, the main man, the kingpin. But the twist in the tale is that he doesn't want to be there anymore. He's made a change. We drove away from gangland, and I was just filled with a sense of relief. A few minutes later, I was filled with a deep sense of sadness because I realized I could have been one of those kids. I could have been this man in another life. That feeling of sadness was overpowered by a sense of responsibility. We needed to tell his story. But how? How do you capture the emotion of hope in a context where the bullet is more powerful than the pen? And so my friend and I co-wrote and performed a piece of theater which gave voice to the dialogue between this gang leader and his therapist, based on a true story. To this day, the gang leader sees a psychologist with the help of the foundation. The play was about the challenges facing a criminal gang boss when he decides to turn his back on the criminal underworld. The play was about hope, about affirming that change is possible. Now, with the help of my father's foundation, we raised funds to bus thousands of school kids out of gangland and into the theater. And after each rendition of the play, the foundation would facilitate discussions between the council and community leaders and teachers in the midst and in the presence of these school kids. We then asked them to critically analyze the play. And suddenly, we stumbled upon a new form of dialogue with this community. Now, side note, my father had to negotiate with the gang bosses to allow these buses to go in and out of the community without shooting at it. But the play was successful. It won a National Theatre Award, and based on the feedback from the audience, we realized that there was a real need for this conversation. So we've set a new goal: to impact the lives of 1 million Cape Flats residents with the play and this new form of dialogue. And we call it Project 1 Million. But what did I learn from meeting a gang boss? I learned that no matter who you are or what you've done, we all have the capacity for change. I walked into that situation fearful, rightly so, but I also viewed him as a monster. And after talking with him, I walked away and I realized that he was a human being with a capacity for change. In conclusion, I realized that in the digital age, we can talk about peace building for hours. And thousands of people can click the like button on Facebook and feel like they've contributed to peace building. And perhaps they have. But if there's no action behind the word, #peace just becomes another word in the modern era and algorithm. So let's not forget that peace building is actually really difficult, that it's uncomfortable, and it requires action and a bit of money. So if any of you have £1 million, let me know. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for your talk. Our next speaker comes from Mali. Fatima Al-Ansar is currently the youngest diplomat of Mali. In addition, she's also a social entrepreneur and an activist for girls and women's education. She's currently serving as the head of mission at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Development. And she's going to talk to us about how empowering a girl empowers a nation. Fatima, the floor is yours.
So I vision a world where men and women live an equal life. I vision a world where we all live life, a peaceful life in harmony. I vision a world where your sexual orientation, your gender, your religious belief, or just by the virtue of difference does not matter. I vision a world, this is the kind of world I want to live in, and this is the kind of world I want my children to live in. And this is the reason why I do the work I do every day. And this is the reason why despite the challenges that I face every day, I get up and do the work that I'm passionate about. I'm originally from northern Mali. I'm Tuareg and Arab. I live in Timbuktu, in northern Mali. That's where I was raised. And I remember growing up, I used to be very frustrated about a lot of things. Growing up is when I realized about the differences that I have from my siblings who are boys. I used to be very frustrated that I was a girl because there's a lot of things that I couldn't do as a girl. And I remember I used to dress up as a boy because I want to go play soccer with the other boys. Because if my grandmother find out that I am outside playing soccer, I know what she's going to do to me. Because a proper girl cannot go out and play soccer. So I used to be very frustrated by that. So I used to even ask myself, why was I even born a girl? I wish I was a boy so I don't have to suffer by all this judgment from the oldest people. And I also wanted to have education as well as a girl, but this is not something a girl could dream of in a conflict zone of Mali. There were a lot of challenges that come with it. And also the fact that the cultural mindset haven't been very progressive about girls' education during that time. But I was lucky and I was fortunate enough that my father was a soldier and he had a very progressive mindset. He believed in education for all. So because of that, I moved out of northern Mali with my sister. We went and lived in Bamako. Finally, we were able to get education. So every summer, at the age of 8, we used to go back home in Timbuktu and teach young girls how to read and write. So I was very excited and happy to see the excitement in those young girls' eyes when teaching them. And from then, I knew this is something that I wanted to do. I want to bring education back to my community. I want them to have this joy that I'm having, this freedom, just by being able to read something when I'm walking on the streets. This is something I want to give back to my community. And when I was 17 years old, I was part of the Children's Parliament in Mali. I became a huge activist for girls' education. So I decided to meet the Minister of Education in Mali, and I was, after working so hard to get the audience with him, finally I was able to, and I told him that I want to build school for girls in my community. And he was like, oh, do you even know how the school curriculum works? And I'm like, yes, I know. Actually, I didn't know, but I was trying to convince him so that he can lend me a land to start my own school for girls in northern Mali. But he told me, I want to challenge you first. So there's a summer school that I want you to run. So the summer school have been running, but lately it's not going very well because the kids are dropping out, the school is not running well. So if you are able to run this summer school very successfully, I will lend you a land to build your own school. So I ran the summer very well, the number of kids increased. He was very happy about the results. Finally, he gave me the land, and I was very happy. Now I'm building my own school. So I did a lot of fundraising in the US, in South Africa. I traveled, give lectures, share my story. Finally, I got the money, and I built the school for girls, the first girls' school in northern Mali. And the girls started going to school. We had, of course, some boys in the school as well. And we had teachers, everything was going well until, unfortunately, in 2012 and 2013 was a very hard time in Mali. And there were a lot of attacks against minority group in southern Mali, and also in northern Mali, there were a lot of rebel groups attacking schools. And my school was part of those schools that has been destroyed, and so many of the girls got injured. So then they left northern Mali. They went to refugee camp in Mauritania. Now with the help of UNICEF, so many of them are now receiving education. And education in time of conflict, it's something very hard to do. Right now in Mali, we have Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. According to UNICEF, 400,000. Okay, According to UNICEF, 400,000 girls are out of school, and also 2,000 schools are closed because of the conflict. And these numbers are very critical, and it's very important to address them. And in Mali right now, at age of 15, the percentage of girls getting married are like 15%. And at age of 18 is 51% of girls are already married. And this is very, very critical because of the conflict. In northern Mali, the number are even higher because of the chances of the girls getting raped on their way to school, the forced marriage to the rebel groups, to the terrorist group in northern Mali. It's something very, very common. That's why the percentage are higher there. The attacks on school become a strategy and also a weapon of war in time of conflict. As Malala was right when he told the United Nations that the extremist group are afraid of books and pains. They are afraid of women because women with books, women who are educated, they will speak out. They will stand up for themselves. They will empower themselves, but they will empower their nation as well. They will not stand up, they will speak out for themselves. That's the reason why we need to empower women, especially in time of conflict. And the UN resolution 1325 is such an important resolution that I want all of us to look closely. The resolution promised to girls and women that their voices and their full involvement in peace building and conflict resolution will be considered and will be very, very important. And we need to take that into consideration and really empower our girls, because to empower a girl, you empower a nation. To build up our girl, we need to build up our nation. To destroy a girl, you need to destroy our nation. So we need to really hold on to empowering girls because they are the key to the development of the whole nation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fatima. Now it's my great pleasure to welcome our last speaker, Hajar Sharif from Libya. 3 years ago, Hajar was selected by Kofi Annan to become one of the 10 young leaders of the Extremely Together initiative of the Kofi Annan Foundation. Extremely Together aims to empower young people to prevent violent extremism in their communities, and also to raise youth voices on this issue of violent extremism that affects them directly. Hajar is also the founder of the organization Together We Build It, that promotes peace and human rights in Libya. And she's a great champion of women's and youth role in peace processes. Hajar, the floor is yours.
So usually when someone asks you to introduce yourself, you say your name, your nationality, maybe what you do for a living, and so on. In my case, when I'm asked to introduce myself, the first thing that comes to my mind after my name is a full-time war survivor. In 2011, I was 18 years old at that time. The revolution started in Libya. And like Tunisia and Egypt, the revolution in Libya quickly turned to a bloody war. When the war reached my city, Tripoli, I decided to volunteer to work at the local hospital because there was a shortage in the staff who didn't make it to the hospital due to the ongoing fighting. My experience at the hospital was striking for one reason. When I started volunteering, I thought I'm going to meet the victims of the war. The typical victims that we see in the media outlets, which is mostly a young man from the front lines who was injured because this person was fighting. However, the first patient I met was an old man who was injured on his way to the grocery store to buy food for his family one evening by an airstrike. Few days after I started working at the hospital, the man passed away. I still remember his young son crying and asking a very critical question: What did my dad do to them? And he was referring to the fighting parties. After leaving the hospital, I realized that my volunteering time is not enough. I need to do more. We need to do more. And I took it upon myself to work day and night to make sure that other people do not go through the same experience and to promote peace. However, I realized I cannot do that alone. So I co-founded an organization called Together We Build It. And as you can see from our name, our core belief is that everyone has a role to play in peace building, despite of age, gender, ethnicity, political beliefs, etc. At the Together We Build It organization, we do three main things. First, we work with local communities and activists in local communities to build up their capacity and encourage them to take an action for peace and reject violence. We advocate for the role of women and young people in formal peace-building processes, be it on a national level or an international level. And my favorite part of the work we do is conducting consultations with local groups on the ground, groups who don't have access to national and international decision makers, and make sure that their voices are heard and taken into account. Since 2011 until this very day, I've been working almost every day promoting peace and encouraging other people to reject violence. However, and unfortunately, Libya is still undergoing extreme forms of violence until the minute I'm speaking right now. But it's not only Libya. The world in general seems to be perceptive to more violence. We live in a world where there are so many people who have been traumatized by wars and airstrikes to an extent that every time they hear a thunder strike, they fear it's an airstrike. I'm one of these people. And I guess you have a lot of healing to do around the world. We live in a world where rain and snow are limited to their seasons, while wars and conflicts go all year round. We live in a world where people fleeing conflicts, searching for a peaceful life, drown in the Mediterranean Sea. We live in a world where young activists like myself, war survivors like myself, who has been working for years to promote peace, are considered extremists and potential terrorists just because of our passport and national identity. I have so many wrong things that I could have listed up to you today, but I think you get my point. What is missing? What is happening? Before the revolution started in Libya, or maybe I should say the war started in Libya, I had an abstract perception about violence and wars. I've seen violent scenes in the media from Afghanistan to Somalia to Iraq, and I always thought of wars and conflicts as a natural disaster that will never hit home. Until one day, it did in 2011, and until this day, we're not able to recover from it. So despite all the work that I'm doing, that all of these many people are doing, and despite the enormous experience the international community claims to have when it comes to peace building, why is peace still absent? Why there is no peace in Libya, why there is no peace in Mali, why there is no peace in Afghanistan and Yemen, and the list goes on. In my opinion, what has been missing for so long is the experience and perspective of the ordinary citizens who live these wars on a daily basis. The people who are resilient, the people who knows how to bring on peace. If world leaders are serious about bringing peace in anywhere around the world, they need to understand few things. First, people are not born violent. People are born into violence. People who live in war zones countries, violence for them is not normal. Violence for them is not acceptable. And if they want to take an action to actually support peace in Africa or any other continent, then the next time they hold a peace round table, they need to ensure that it's not only the fighting parties who are sitting in this table. They need to make sure that people from all walks of life in these war zone countries has a voice and has opinion to deliver to them. Usually when I'm asked to speak at events like this, I will talk about what we do at the organization, how we do it. But I think what I want to focus on today is the why. Why we do the things we do. My 16 years old sister, Sajida, has the perfect answer for this. I'm quoting her. She said, "I'm no longer okay with hearing innocent people die because of hate, refugee kids starving to death, freezing to death, and continue living my life normally. I will fast every Thursday in solidarity with innocent people who are suffering from war and conflict. I will fast in solidarity with kids struggling with poverty. I will fast because I care. I will fast for peace to protest violence, hate, and discrimination." My 16 years old sister decided to fast every Thursday just to show that she cares. Since she started fasting, she had more than 300 people, teenagers at her age, joining her, which is a group in the society who's usually excluded from any peace work. As Maud mentioned, I had the privilege to work with Kofi Annan for the past 3 years. I first met Mr. Annan in 2016, and the last thing he said in our first meeting, "Please don't let me down," referring to our work when it comes to peace and security. We're gathered here today to honor his memory. If we really want to do that, then everyone who's leaving this room needs to make this promise to not let Mr. Kofi Annan down. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hashira, and thank you for reminding us of Mr. Annan's last words. We'd now like to invite Simon Gimson, who is the Vice President of Interpeace, to close our event.
Thanks, Sarah. Well, thank you very much, Sarah, and for all the arrangements you put in place. I was trying to think a little bit about what it is that I take away from this, and I think the underlying thought I have is that just as conflict is a very human experience and a natural experience, so is peace building. And peace building is a very profoundly personal experience. And we've heard that tonight. We know from Kofi Annan himself, his own personal contribution at the global level, at the leadership level, at the political level. We know through the Bonavero Institute and Kate, your leadership of it, its pursuit of, not for me, human rights, but human dignity. We know from all the testaments we've heard, the testimonies we've heard tonight, the profound experiences that each of these individuals has had, and the contributions they're making towards peace building. We in Interpeace are doing our part, playing our part at a very granular level, at a community level, and it's very inspiring. It's what I consider, from what I've heard tonight, I feel that it's like sedimentary layer on sedimentary layer. You all here tonight have contributed by being here towards almost 7,000 people who've contributed and participated in these peace talks. And every time someone stands up and gives a testimony, they're adding another sedimentary layer of wisdom about peace building and how we can all contribute in our own way. So I pay real homage and appreciation and thanks to you all for your contributions. And I thank you all for participating by being here tonight and learning and being able to take some of this away in your own personal experiences going forward. I think the easiest and best thing I can do now is please ask all of our participants and contributors tonight to join me here so that you can all thank them in the usual customary way. Please come and join me. Okay, thanks so much, please.